Welcome to Financial Journey Insights, brought to you by Baggette Co Wealth Management. I'm Oscar Hjalmas, and today we're exploring one of life's biggest transitions, retirement. But this isn't just about the numbers. It's about the emotional shift that comes with moving from earning and saving to actually spending and enjoying wealth you all worked so hard to build. I'm joined by Nick Kesley, an investment consultant and client of ours here at Baggette Co. Nick's kindly agreed to share his personal experience of this transition. Together, we'll talk about the mindset changes, the common anxieties people face, and the practical steps that can help you move forward with clarity and confidence. Let's get started. So, Nick, let's go back to your accumulation years. Could you go through that a little bit with us, and what was your focus back then?
Okay, so I started my career in the city quite early, at the age of 18, having left school with some A-levels. And I worked for a number of financial institutions, including US investment banks. And I quite quickly became a fully fledged trader in the city, trading fixed income securities for an American investment bank in my early 20s. And at that stage, pensions, like for many people, didn't really enter my mind. But the scheme that the bank offered me was very financially advantageous in the fact that they matched contributions. And so I started on my journey, contributed my pension scheme in my early 20s in quite large amounts.
So early 20s, you started saving pretty much straight away?
Straight away.
Okay.
But I was in a fortunate position in that I was remunerated very well for somebody of my age. So I didn't have any financial constraints about, whatever went into the pension didn't impede on my lifestyle.
Oh, okay. So you didn't feel like you had to sacrifice too much?
Absolutely not. And so I worked for various investment banks up until my late 30s and retired from the city at the age of 40. So that was a period where I religiously contributed to my pension and
saved for the future.
And saved for the future.
Many people aren't in that situation, are they? No. So many people will have to make sacrifices.
Well, I think that is the key issue. We hear a lot on the press about how it's advantageous to start saving to your pension when you're young, but with the cost of living, as we know, is exceptionally high. I think we're sort of slightly missing a point here. In the fact is that a lot of people are just not in a position where they can contribute to what they should be to ensure a financially secure life when they retire. So it's a balance, and that's a balance that didn't really enter into my thoughts in my earlier career.
One of my big things here is and I say this to a lot of young people, and obviously advice depends completely on the individual, but for me, saving for a property and getting on the housing ladder is arguably more important than actually saving into a retirement to start with. Now, obviously, now we have auto enrollment, which means that your employer will match up to a certain level, and I would encourage most people to consider that. But actually, putting excess amounts into your pension, it might be worth putting into other pots. Like you said, you were in the very fortunate position that you didn't feel like you had to sacrifice too much. But what would you say to somebody who maybe has to sacrifice, who's like, okay, do I save for a house? Do I save for my retirement? What would you say the balance should be there?
I would agree with the view that saving a deposit for the house is priority one. We live in a country where home ownership is considered the number one priority in financial planning. So yes, so it comes down to prioritizing your financial needs. So yes, I would tend to agree. If there was a choice between saving and buying a house and saving into your pension, I would probably choose the former.
Mm.
So investing to buy your first property.
And then once you have that property, would you then readdress?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, affordability, as I said, is always key. You know, saving for the future is obviously, as we know, is exceptionally important. But, you know, you're only on this planet once, and, you know, you've got to be able to live life.
Mm.
And if you're saving for when you retire at 65 and you're only 25, do you really want to be in a position where you're curtailing your lifestyle for the next 40 years to save for when you're 65? So I think it's important you get a balance.
Mm. And then you're completely right. But then that's a little bit abstract for some people, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say to people who want to know, okay, right, I need a target. I need something to aim for, because a lot of people say, oh, I want £1 million in my pension, but they don't really know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say to people like that? So let's say you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, you're trying to get to a certain lifestyle by the time you retire.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say there's a way to structure that for people?
Well, I think reviewing it on a regular basis with a financial advisor is absolutely key, because, you know, perhaps in the early stages when you've just bought a house, you can't contribute as much to your pension as you would like. But as you move on, perhaps you get promotion, you get pay rises and whatever, then you can then start to increase your pension contributions. And I think, you know, setting a figure is very, very difficult. I think it's just the realization that, you know, with the current state of the economy and the current state of the government finances, you cannot rely on the state to provide you with a comfortable retirement. Mm-hmm. So I think
that's a big statement.
Yeah, it is a big statement. But you hear rumours about them extending the retirement age from currently 66, which I'm lucky as I fell within that bracket, so I'm collecting mine next year. But you know, there's views that you won't be able to collect your state pension until you're 70 if you're in your early 20s now. And
all means testing.
All means testing. So relying on the state pension for your retirement is not, I think, a sensible approach.
And we talked a lot about pensions now, but obviously there are other ways to save for retirement. Mm-hmm. So people save by being landlords. Mm-hmm. You know, you can start a business, you can buy other assets. So it's not necessarily, you don't have to do a pension. No. But one of the reasons why you would do a pension is because it's usually very tax advantageous, isn't it?
Well, yeah, absolutely tax efficient. And I've outside of my pension, used the ISA allowances for both my wife Catherine and myself, and that's sort of another safety net, because that is easily accessible before your retirement age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're allowed to invest currently at £20,000 a year. You don't get the tax relief that when you put it in, but any gain is tax free, and any income you take from it is tax free. So that's an additional investment strategy, which if you could afford to do it, then I would definitely, if you're maxing out your pension contributions, to have money in ISAs is easier. Or even, as you quite rightly say, buy-to-let properties have been exceptionally popular over the last 10, 20 years.
That's getting more difficult now, though.
But it is getting more
difficult
because,
slightly.
The administration, regulations, and the taxation of buy-to-let properties is much more stringent and not so advantageous. You could argue that buy-to-let properties aren't particularly liquid. You are very much dependent on the property market when and if you want to sell. So a cash ISA or a stocks and shares ISA for easy access, I think is if you can afford to do it, I would definitely recommend you look at that.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And then, so we've accumulated wealth.
Yeah.
We've got ourselves in order. Mm-hmm. How do we go from accumulating wealth to decumulating wealth? And do you want to tell us a little bit about your own journey there and how you found it so far?
it is a very difficult mindset to overcome. So you spent the last 40 years or whatever accumulating into your pension, your ISAs or whatever. And then, so you then come to the end of your employment. I'm fortunate enough in that I sort of still work on a sort of much reduced basis. But I obviously need income from the pension and the ISAs to maintain my lifestyle and to enjoy life. But it is very difficult to get over that hump. So you spent 40 odd years saving, and now you've got to come to the conclusion, well, I've got to start reducing that savings.
It's a big psychological mindset, isn't it?
It's absolutely very difficult, and the major concern of any person in retirement is, am I going to run out of money before I die?
Yeah.
And so you can argue that your major expenditure has occurred, and hopefully you've paid off your mortgage, whether you've educated your children privately. But there is other things that will come up in retirement, like if you need to go into a nursing home for care, whatever, which, as we well know, is exceptionally expensive.
Or on a more positive note, buy a boat.
Yeah, and that is the mindset, and that is the mindset is taking advice to understand that you are not going to run out of money, and that once that is, and that takes time. It's not a sort of overnight decision. It takes a lot of thinking about and whatever, and then once you've realised that you can start taking money from your pension. And if the value of that drops over, until you die, that's fine. And as you quite rightly says, you've got to enjoy life.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things. And
there is no point in giving up your job and retiring and sitting at home being miserable because you can't afford to do anything, or you don't think you can afford to do anything. So so that's been a big issue for me, and it's taken me probably a year or even 2 years to get over that hump.
Well, I say to a lot of people as well that at this point, a lot of people say, oh, you should be happy. This is exciting. You should be super stoked about retiring. And actually, that's not the reality for a lot of people. A lot of people, they miss work. They miss the challenge. They miss the purpose of getting up every day. So then you have this really big shift of people say, you should be so happy. And actually, you're not. It's not necessarily exactly what you want. And obviously, you've done it really, really well, but you've been able to scale down. So you're not jumping off a cliff. So would you say then your priorities during this, between accumulation to accumulation, did you feel that they changed? Your priorities for investing, your priorities for your family, and all that.
Well, yeah. So your investment appetite, or my investment appetite, obviously became less riskier as I approached retirement, because capital preservation rather than capital appreciation becomes the key. But you're quite right about when somebody retires. So you've spent whatever it is, 40 years working 9 till 5 if you were lucky, or 8 till 6, or 50 hours a week, or whatever it is. You might have been running a business, or you might have been employed, and then all of a sudden you've got all that time on your own, perhaps with your partner or whatever, and you've got to fill that time, because otherwise you're going to get, you're probably going to be bored, B, you're going to be frustrated, and C, there is a danger that you start to feel somewhat depressed, and because you don't have that daily interaction with your colleagues at work. So the planning away from the financial side, I think, is just as important. It's being able to realize that you're going to have time on your side, and you need to reach out. You might have a bucket list, and everybody talks about their bucket list. I would suggest that your bucket list is commensurate with your financial. Don't have these don't have these dreams of buying a boat as you described, or a villa in Spain or whatever. Just have sensible things that you might want to do. It might be just planning a 6-week trip into the Far East or Australia, which you probably hadn't done before, because you now have the time to do it. But it is, I've found one of my biggest struggles was the time I had on my hands.
So if you could go back in time then, because this is, I find this very, very interesting. So if you could go back in time, say 5 years before you started semi-retirement, what would you tell yourself as advice of how you would do it differently, if at all?
And I don't think it's as easy as that, because I think, when you are still working, I mean, it's slightly different for me in the fact that I've sort of slowed down, so to speak. But if you're in a full-time employment up until the age of whether it's 60 or 65, you don't really have that time to think about the future.
No, I guess not.
So it just hits you like a freight.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, your boss calls you in and say you're 60 or you're 65. Thank you very much. You've done a great job. I wish you a very happy retirement. And you think, so you pack up your desk.
Yeah.
You put all your belongings in there and you go home and you think, okay.
Yeah.
So what would I suggest to anybody in that is start thinking about it before your retirement. That's important. Mm-hmm. Start having goals that what you would like to do in your retirement. Firstly, the first port of call is, and that should be a good period before you actually retire, is talk to a financial advisor about your financial situation. So whether he can reassure you about you have enough money, or perhaps that you might have to make a lifestyle change.
Yeah, and that's where, so obviously I will raise the flag for financial advisors here. But for me, one of the biggest tools that we use is something called cashflow modeling. Mm-hmm. And I know we've used that with you a lot. Yeah. And that is where we plug in all of your financial details. We plug in all of your objectives and how much we expect your expenditure to be. Mm-hmm. And then we try and map out your life, but in financial terms. So obviously your objectives, I'm never going to tell you what you should do, but if you can tell me what it is that you kind of want to do, and hopefully that gives people a level of comfort at least.
Absolutely. Sure. Absolutely. The only thing you can't tell me is when I'm going to die.
No, I can't, but we can.
You can make an educated guess, but that I'm sure anybody entering in retirement, the main concern they have is, do I have enough money?
So Nick, you're now in the semi-retirement phase. Mm-hmm. What does a typical day or week look like for you right now?
Well, I'm fortunate in that my house is paid for, and I have a lovely garden, and my wife doesn't work, and so we are quite sporty people. So sport is a very key part in our lives. So we play lots of tennis and we play lots of golf. So that's a key part, and I think keeping fit is quite key to your mental state.
Yeah. Well, you just told me before that you do about 20,000 steps a day.
I know.
That's insane.
Yeah, I got 2 dogs.
I know, but still, that's a lot of steps.
But I know that probably is excessive. But whatever. What I would suggest is, if you've had a sedentary working life, sitting at a desk or whatever, getting outside in nature, pursuing your hobbies, whether it be tennis or golf or walking or whatever, I think is key. And so we spend a lot of time playing sport. We socialize quite a lot. We have a group group of friends that we socialised. You know, the one good thing about COVID was, and I repeat this because I think it is quite important, is that when you have people around for supper, you don't not have the 8 o'clock come for 8 for 8:30. Everybody now comes around for a kitchen supper at 7. So there's one good thing about COVID that I think has changed people's views. So we socialise quite a lot. You know, we obviously have 3 grown-up children, so who all live in London. I'm a grandfather, and I've got 1 granddaughter and 1 on the way. So I could see us spending a lot more time going up to London and being with them, which is lovely. You know, it's a different part of your life, and which is just very exciting.
So I want to dig a little bit deeper into that then. So what would you say is the one biggest adjustment you feel like you've had to make? And I know you're not retired yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is the one thing you're like, that is the biggest retirement? That is the biggest change that I've had to make in my routine?
Is when you wake up and get up.
Okay, tell me more.
If you've spent 40 years, and as I said, I worked in the city, and so I was up at 5:30, 6 o'clock to get into the office for a morning meeting at 7 o'clock. And, that changed a little bit throughout my life. But I'm convinced that you will never, ever get out of that routine.
Mm-hmm.
You will always wake up at whatever time you have to wake up, whether it be 6 o'clock or 5:30 or 6 o'clock. And I do that regularly all the time. But I'm now only just been able to turn over and go back to sleep for a couple of hours, because I realise I don't have to get up at 6 or 6:30. So I now get up at 7:45, 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So, but it takes time.
I know, because I used to get texts at 6 o'clock in the morning from you going, have you seen the markets? They've done this.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, well, some people might be different, but I would hazard a guess that if you've always woken, the alarm has gone off at 6 or 6:30, it will continue. And you've got to train yourself to. Fact is that you don't need to get up at that time and to roll over and go back to sleep. So that is a major. Because if you're up at 6 o'clock and you've got nothing to do, it makes the day quite long.
Yeah, I can imagine that. But you're slightly different. So there's 2 camps of people, I think. So there's the people that want to stay somewhat professionally active, mm-hmm. and the people that want to retire. And mm-hmm. both are absolutely fine. Mm-hmm. But you're more in the camp of wanting to stay slightly professionally active, aren't mm-hmm. you? Why do you think that is?
Mental stimulation. It's purely mental stimulation. It's being engaged. It's connection with society. I think I think the danger is that if you're retired and you don't have an interest outside of your hobbies, mm-hmm. there is a danger that you become slightly insular. Mm-hmm. Well, for me, it's purely down to mental stimulation. Mm.
Super important.
Super important. I spent my whole life in the financial markets, and I've loved it. I'm fortunate in that I've always loved what I've done, and to stay informed about the markets is key to my mental health. To be honest.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of people go through this. Yeah. And I read a terrifying statistics the other day that most people that die are retired.
Well, hopefully I've got a few years left. But occupying, keeping your mind active, I think is key. And it doesn't have to be in the same sphere of employment that you had, and I've got friends who do charity work because they just want to give something back to society, and I think that is quite key. In we've worked all our lives, and we've been paid, and we now have the option of and time to give something back to society. And a lot of my friends do charitable work. I haven't had the time to do it, but because I'm maintaining a sort of a slightly busy lifestyle, which I think is key to me. But it's not for everybody. Some people want to relax, just enjoy their time on their own,
which is also okay.
Which is okay.
There's no right or wrong here.
There's no right or wrong. It's what you feel comfortable with, what you feel is good for your mental health, which I think is key, because there is the danger of becoming insular and becoming slightly down and more depressed, which is obviously not great.
And what would you say then? So during this phase, what would you say is your biggest positive surprise? The thing that you've thought, oh, I hadn't even thought that was going to be the case. Is it being able to get up later?
Yeah, actually, it has. The ability to turn over and have an extra hour and a half in bed is great. It's having time to think about life and realizing, being grateful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Being grateful for what you have is one of the most uplifting emotions that you can have. Mm. And being financially secure enough to realize that I could spend time with my children, who are all grown up. Mm-hmm. I know gainful employment, thank goodness, but I don't think they're ever off your hands financially, but that's another story. And, with grandchildren to come, that's what I'm grateful for. Be able to plan my life to do what I want to do.
Yeah. So you said that, your children have it financially off your hands, which I obviously probably agree with. So how would you say then your mindset around spending has changed during this phase?
You can't take it with you.
Well, I like that. Yeah.
You can't take it with you. Passing down money to your children has not become, 2 to 3 years ago, inheritance tax paying was one of the key things in my mind. Now, having got over that hump of deaccumulation, my view is they will have enough when I eventually fall off my perch. My priority is for my partner, Catherine, and I to enjoy life. And if that means spending money with my children, that's fine. We've been fortunate in that we've managed to help our children to some extent in getting on the housing ladder. But and having that discussion with them is quite key, because what they want is for you as their parents is to enjoy life.
Yes. Yeah. And most children do. And we tell this to people all the time. And it's like, they want their parents to enjoy it. And the parents have this view that actually they think the children, and it's like, no. Like, have fun, go enjoy yourselves.
They might joke when we do go on a long holiday and, rather than go in the back of the aeroplane, we decide to go on business class, and they might joke, well, that's my inheritance going down there. But they don't mean it, and it's joking, and they really, my children want us to enjoy life, and hopefully that will mean spending a lot more time with them, going on holiday with them, and being able to be, just be there and present and whatever.
So how did you refine your own security then? So do you feel secure with your money now? What would you say was the main drivers for that to make you secure in this phase?
I think cash flow modeling was a key point for me, in the fact that how it was explained, and when certain things happen, like your state pension kicks in, and I think it's something that you pointed out, Oscar, which I've really valued is you're 65, Nick. In 5 years' time or 6 years' time, hopefully we remain fit and active and whatever. The likelihood is that you're not going to be going on faraway holidays quite so often. Mm-hmm. So your expenditure will naturally decrease. Mm. And I think that, and I've really taken that on board. So I'm spending all of my money in the next 5 years.
As quickly as I can.
Yeah, as quickly as I can before I become infirm and whatever. So, but that is taking, advice and whatever.
Yeah. So then I've paused you there very quickly. So what would you say the strategies are then for you to make this transition a success? So one of the things you just talked about was, right, I understand that I'm going to spend more early retirement. Mm-hmm. It's not a flat curve. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a flat curve. That's another thing. It's not a flat line. It goes up at the start and then it's going to fall off naturally. So that's obviously one of the strategies. Anything else you feel has helped you make this transition a success?
I think flexibility. So having the ISA portfolios, mm-hmm. which one could pigeonhole as rainy day money, mm-hmm. is key, because you don't know what life's going to throw at you. Your car might explode or whatever, or you might have a health issue or something that impacts you financially. So having outside, even outside of your pension, having a pot of rainy day money, I think is very reassuring.
And having a bit of a financial plan.
Yeah. So as I said before, I think, if you are in a fortunate position where you can contribute to your ISAs as well as your pension, then I would recommend you do that. And I guess it's constant reassurance that your plan is working. And that really does mean talking on a regular basis with your financial advisor. I'm by no means suggesting that you constantly look at your portfolios or whatever, because markets do go up and down. And there is a danger. I do know some individuals retired and do nothing but spend every single day looking at their portfolios. And that is a danger because they've got nothing else to do.
Yeah. And that's market volatility, isn't it? So events happen. And I remember we had a big event not too far in the past that really shocked the markets. Mm-hmm. And that can cause anxiety, right? Sure. It can worry you. And the best thing that we say is just try and look through the noise. Mm-hmm. It's time in the market, not timing the market, to make sure that whatever you do not sell when it's cheap. No. You buy when it's cheap and you sell when it's high. And if you can stick to that strategy, you'll be the most successful trader in the world.
Well, exactly. And if we all did that, we'd all be multimillionaires, and we wouldn't need financial advisors, would we? No, but it is the power of staying invested. I lived through many financial crises in my time, and history will always tell you that a knee-jerk reaction of disinvesting will always 99% be the worst outcome for you. So it's reassurance in these times. And as I say, there is a danger, and I don't want to get technical here, but there is a danger when you're in drawdown with a pension that you could be drawing down when the markets are low. So, but as you quite rightly suggested to me, we can take out what is called sequential risk, where you have a pot of money that which is invested in very cautious instruments, which allow you to draw down without having an impact on your capital preservation.
Well, we always suggest that people have, like you do in your ISAs, have a pot aside as an emergency fund. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, it depends completely on personal circumstances how much is in that emergency fund. But having something for, that you said, when the car blows up or something happens to your roof or whatever, because then You're not forced to sell at a low, right?
Yeah.
And when you save for retirement, sequential risk, or what's called pound cost averaging, works in your favor, because hopefully you're buying cheap all the time as the markets go up.
Sure.
Whereas obviously it has the complete opposite effect. If markets are going down and you're having to sell lower and lower and lower, you want to try and stay away from that as much as you can.
Yeah. So flexibility is key. So if you are fortunate enough that when markets are low that you have a pot of money outside of your pensions, you might choose to halt taking your pension pays and dipping into your other investors such as ISAs. But that's all down to sensible financial planning. And as I said, it's an ongoing process because the world changes. Your circumstances, my circumstances I'm sure will change over the next 5, 10, 15 years. And that's another key thing about sort of getting back to being on your own when you retire. Having a professional advisor, and the ability to be able to call up that professional advisor at any time is very important, because there are always going to be times when you are going to feel uncomfortable. But as I said, the danger is that you daily look at your portfolios and you measure, oh, it's gone down 1%, or it's gone down 2%, or whatever. That is quite dangerous.
Yeah.
Oscar, you're obviously, we've had a relationship for quite a long time, and you've obviously know my financial circumstances in detail, and as of my partner, Catherine. But I guess one of the difficult questions you're probably asked is, when can I retire? When do you, Mr. Financial Advisor, suggest that you're in a position when you can retire?
Yeah, I always split that question into two. So I split it into personal and financial. So a lot of people that we work with, from a personal level, I don't think they should retire. They think they want to retire, they retire, they hate it, and they go back to work. Which is always a very, very interesting scenario to be in. And I've had over 100 clients retire now throughout my career, and I think it's one of the worst decisions that people can make. And I think what you've done is, when you scale down, I think works a lot better for people. For example, a 3-day working week, I think, is amazing, because actually then your time off is 4 days and your work is 3 days. And all of a sudden, the balance of life is a lot easier. And then you have the financial side. So, when can I afford to retire? So there's a lot of studies, there's a lot of data out there that shows kind of how much you want to have in retirement. And they're very, very personal discussions. From a financial perspective, when can people retire? It is all to do with what kind of lifestyle they want. So I always use one of my clients as an example. Sold his business, multi-millionaire, and loves gardening. He spends sub £25,000 a year. He has a state pension. He has also got a generous defined benefit scheme, the final salary scheme, which pays him for the rest of his life. So he actually saves money every single year. And for him, it was all to do with the personal, nothing to do with the financial. I've also got people who are desperate to retire. They do hard jobs. I'm very happy that I'm a pen pusher. There's very little physical strain in my job, if any at all. Whereas we work with people who have extremely physical jobs, and oil rig workers and stuff like that. And obviously they're from the completely opposite view. They're like, I want to retire as quickly as possible from a personal view, because I want to get out of this line of work. When can I afford to retire? So it is an extremely difficult question to just answer, and I do not believe that it's a blanket answer to it. I think you have to have a conversation with somebody about, what are the levers that I can pull, what are the sacrifices that I'm willing to make, and what are my hard stops. So I have people who say, I want to be able to run my house in the UK, and I want to be able to run my house in France. Yeah. And that for me is a non-negotiable. I never want to have to sell either of those houses until I'm 90. Fine. Let's work out a plan then. Let's work that out. But for other people, they have a lot higher requirements. One of the things that I say as well, and you touched on it, is you need, in my opinion, you need to own your property in the UK. You need to own it outright, because the last thing you want to do is go into retirement and have to rent. I think that's a quick ways of destroying quite a lot of capital very, very quickly. So it is different for different people on how far they should go.
Yeah, I guess matching the personal side with the financial side is not it. There's not a perfect equation, and it is. I would suggest to you that the personal side is the more difficult to advise.
Yeah, and I always say to people, I'm not a life coach, and I can only tell you from my own experience. But I think it's very easy if you have a high pressure job, if you just retire from on a cliff. Depression is very, very likely. Alcoholism is very, very likely. Divorce is insane. You spent 30 years apart from your spouse, and then all of a sudden you retire, and then you divorce within 2 years. It's very, very likely. There are all of these things because there is such a big shift in your life.
Yeah.
So I think being gentle and being kind to yourself. So a lot of people, they're not kind to themselves, and they don't reach out and they don't talk to other people. And it's about that discrepancy when people say you should be happy, but actually I'm unhappy. This doesn't make me happy. So you feel really isolated. You feel really alone. And I believe that people need purpose. I think that's one of the biggest things in life. And not having a reason to get up in the morning, I think, is one of the saddest things ever, because that creates loneliness. It creates isolation. And I always say that the worst punishment that we could possibly come up with for people is isolation. So when you go to prison, and for the most heinous criminals that we have, we put them in isolation. So why would you purposefully do that as a retiree? Why would you isolate yourself from your network of friends in work? Also, another thing, and this is really, really common for us. So we work a lot with business owners, and we have a lot of people in their 30s, late 30s, early 40s that retire, right? So they sell a business, they make millions, and from a financial side, I can sit with them and go, yeah, you can afford to retire. With the lifestyle that you want, there's absolutely not a problem to retire. Those people really struggle because they are so alone. Because all of their friends still work. Yeah. All of their family still works. And for some of them, even their parents still work. So it's so important to get the balance right. We've mentioned charity work. You don't have to go into another high-pressure job. You can even say to yourself, right, I'm going to take a couple of years off. I'm going to do nothing. The purpose is do it. My objective for the next 2 years is to do nothing, get my health back, or whatever it is. And I can't remember who it was now. I think it was the Dalai Lama who said, Western society confuses me. You spend your youth and your health to get wealth, and then you spend your old age and your wealth to try and get back your health. Now, wouldn't it be much better if we can kind of even out that equation a little bit and preserve ourselves more throughout this journey? And I think for people who do retire, it's having one eye on the fact that, okay, this isn't necessarily going to make me happy. I need to find something to fill my life with. The world was very different 50 years ago. If you and I were miners, I probably couldn't wait to retire if I had to dig coal. That is such a physically demanding job that I think I couldn't wait to have a real break. But that's not the world we live in anymore. We live in a world where people are living a lot longer.
Sure.
Not just from a physical standpoint, from a mental standpoint. Like, there's a lot of really, really good medication that helps you live a healthy life mentally and physically for much longer. So before, I think, when the state pension was introduced from the Navy, I think the expected life expectancy after retirement was sub 5 years. For someone who retires today at 65, I think the life expectancy is about 92. So that means that you have approximately 30 years in retirement, whereas before you had 5. That's a very different equation. So I think it's a very individual thing. And I think you absolutely need to take it very seriously, and you need to talk to somebody. It doesn't have to be a financial advisor necessarily, but you need to talk to somebody about, how do I manage this so this transition is as smooth as possible?
Yeah, so in summary, it's health health and connection, isn't it, really? If you have the financial situation under control, which will afford you the lifestyle you want, it's the more emotional side to it, which is key. And as I said earlier, the sooner you start thinking about it, the better.
Absolutely. Stanford have run this psychological experiment, and it's the longest psychological experiment ever ran. I think they're 60 years in now, and it's about what makes people healthy. So, and it's quite surprising in many ways for some people, but smoking, drinking, doing extreme sports, and all of that, it pales in comparison if you don't have one element to your life, and that is social connections. So it is much worse for you not seeing friends, not spending time with your partner, not spending time with your children or anything like that, having your golfing buddies, having the charity, having the local health club, whatever it is much worse to not do those things than to smoke and drink. It reduces your life expectancy, it reduces your happiness a lot more. So yeah, the connection part when you retire is so imperative, and you need to try and get that right. And I'm a self-proclaimed workaholic. I love working. It's one of my absolute favorite things to do. I do it, or some people say I do it way too much. I wish I could do it more. So I know that for me personally, when I retire, I need to really look after myself, because I know that a lot of my working connections will naturally drift away, as they should. So I need to have a replacement for that when I do it.
So Oscar, let's take take my example, for instance, is that we would reach our so-called retirement age where we, in my case, have decided to slow down, not fully stop. But I have a pension pot, and I have a ISA pot, and I have income from investment properties that I own. How do we bring that all together? Because we mentioned before the danger of drawing down on your pension portfolio, or any portfolio that matter, when markets are experiencing turbulence and drawdowns. So we mentioned cash flow modeling, which I think it was obviously part of that process. But how do you bring the whole of somebody's financial circumstances together to produce a plan?
I think that is a wonderful question, and I think that is one of the most important questions to ask yourself when you're moving from accumulation to accumulation. There's many ways of doing it. I have decided, for us as a firm, we don't care about attitude to risk necessarily. So how you feel about risk and how much risk you should be taking during investment, I don't think that's particularly important. I don't think your personal, as in my clients, investor experience is particularly important. They need to have an understanding of what it is that they do, but I don't think they need to necessarily have too much input into it. The main thing that we care about, and that I feel is the most important, is something called capacity for loss. And it's exactly as it sounds. So how much money can you afford to lose? I always make the joke of, when I go to the casino, I love going to the casino, but I only ever take out £50. And the reason why I take out £50 is because I don't care if I lose £50. I would have had a good evening. I would have had a couple of drinks. I would have had a laugh with my friends. And actually, if I walk out with £0 in my pocket, it is what it is. I've spent £50 and I've had a good night. I would not have that same feeling if I spent £5,000. That would make me sad. I'd look at the opportunity cost and I'd go, well, actually, that was a stupid thing to do. So we do exactly the same for our clients. We don't go to the casino. We put you into different risk buckets. So we have one risk bucket for your emergency fund. So when things don't go too well, or we have a big downturn in markets or something like that, we like having a pot of money that sits, that is very, very safe, usually invested in cash and just trickles away. And that is a percentage of your overall wealth. And again, that depends on the individual, but it's a percentage of your wealth. And then we have the second bucket, which is more medium term, where we have more risk than the first bucket. And that bucket's primary objective is to feed your emergency fund. So when you draw money down, you and I will sit down every year and we will put more money, hopefully, into your smallest risk bucket. And we tend to look at this to be about a 5 to 10 year horizon on the medium risk QI. And then we have the long-term one. And this is the one where we have a 10 plus year investment horizon. This is used to feed the middle bucket. And what we do here is we invest much more aggressively. It's much more long-term. And we tend not to, well, we look at it all the time, but we tell our clients, please, please, please don't look at this very often because it can have very, very large volatility and very, very large fluctuations. That way, we're able to give you a much more comprehensive financial plan. Because if we have one investment or one set of investments and we have what's called, a very, very specific risk, you can then really, really be disadvantaged if there is a market downturn. The best example is COVID. So COVID hit the world in early 2020. It only trickled through to the financial markets in about the February, and then by early April, the full effects had been realized within the financial markets, which coincides with the end and the start of the tax year, which is when a lot of people take money out. So we were very, very fortunate that we were able to call up all of our clients. We had very, very stringent communication throughout. We wrote to most people either weekly or bi-weekly, and we said, listen, isn't it fantastic? Your long-term thing has fallen a lot, okay? It is painful right now to look at the overall value of your portfolio. However, Mr. and Mrs. Klein, your low-risk bucket has hardly moved at all, if anything, yeah? Because it's invested in cash and stuff like that, so it's absolutely safe. So this year, I will recommend that we take 100% of your income from this bucket. Now, we didn't know at the time it was going to be something called a V-shaped recovery, which means that the markets actually came back relatively quickly. And I think by about September, October time, we were back to where we were pre-COVID. But we didn't know that at the time. So a lot of our clients took money out here who didn't do any rebalancing. And then when markets came back to a normal level, we called everybody up again and went, hi, we would now like to rebalance your portfolios. We're now comfortable with where they are. Now, markets continued to rally, which again, we didn't know, but at least no one had to sell at a massive discount. Mm-hmm. So what you do is you do holistic financial planning. You look at your overall portfolio, you look at all of your assets, all of your expenditure, all of your potential income, and then you formulate a comprehensive plan thinking about all of those things.
That's very reassuring. And, that's exactly the path I have followed. And I think just one of the major concerns I have now as a client is the potential changes to IHT rules regarding pensions. Has that changed your outlook and advice to clients? Are you suggesting, for argument's sake, that they should look to draw down on their pensions more fully and use perhaps other outside investors like ISAs and general investment accounts to further more IHT planning? Is that something that you're considering, or?
It's a very interesting question because as we sit here today, it's not legislation. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have no reason to think that it's not going to be a legislation, but as we sit here today, it is not legislation, which means that it's very difficult for me to give advice on, because there was talk of potential reduction in the tax-free cash that people could take out of their pension, mm-hmm. and that never materialized. So we had some clients who wanted to take out the tax-free cash before then, and then ended up having to do reversals, which means that we put the tax-free cash back in because you have something called a 30-day cooling off period, and which is really, really messy. So at the moment, I'm keeping half an eye on the fact that yes, legislation is changing. There are legislation out there that do help you as a retiree. So you can gift to your children or anybody out of excess disposable income. So if you were to draw down extra, you are able to pass that without affecting what's called the 7-year rule, which means that it falls out of your estate straight away. So there are things that you are able to do. But until it is legislation, we are not going to be pivoting too hard, because I personally believe that with this double tax, I don't like double taxation personally. I think, I absolutely don't mind paying inheritance tax. I think that's fair. I don't mind paying an income tax. I think that's fair. I don't have any problem with it. But what the legislation is proposing is that your pension is first taxed for inheritance tax purposes, and then your beneficiaries from your estate then pay income tax at their prevailing rate. So, for example, if I earn £50,000, the excess will be paid at 40%, which means that my pension for my daughter could potentially be taxed first at 40% and then an additional 40%. So I think I'm not a big fan of these double taxation rules. I do hope the government reconsiders it slightly, but no, we're not giving active advice on that yet, but we are discussing it with people. It does leave a bit of a sour taste in the mouth with regards to putting more money into a pension. We have something in the UK called the pension gap, which I can't remember exactly how much it is, but I believe it's in the trillions, which means that we are very short with how much we are saving for retirement as a country as a whole. And policies that discourage people putting money into a pension, I don't really understand. But arguably, I would say that I'm a financial advisor. It's the industry I work in, so I would obviously want to protect it as much as possible. And I would encourage people to save for their retirement. And I think this is a deterrent to save, which I don't like to see. I think it's a very, very complex issue. I think this policy is probably one of the reasons why we're seeing millionaires leave the UK, because actually other countries have zero tax on pensions. They have zero inheritance tax. So, if you're in your late 80s and you're like, well, actually, if I move and live in Switzerland for a few years, then my estate doesn't pay anything. So I think it's a counterintuitive policy. We talk a lot about secondary effects of stuff. So the primary effect of this policy would have been to try and get more taxes in for or more revenue in for HMRC. But I think, unfortunately, it's counterproductive. And I think the secondary effects of this policy is going to mean that you're going to have less tax receipts and you're going to see more people leaving the country or moving their pensions abroad.
So my takeaway from that is beware of knee-jerk reactions.
Yes, absolutely.
And somebody in retirement who is probably not as financially savvy as you and I, there is that danger that you read a headline figure and you act accordingly or hastily, which can have unwanted effects on your retirement. I know, and I think that is where I think the communication between an advisor and a client is paramount. Even if you are unable or unwilling to give advice on legislation that hasn't come about, at least one should have that discussion.
Yes, 100%. 100%. You should be aware of what's coming down the line, so it's, and we still talk to clients now who aren't aware, so they think that their pension is 100% tax-free when they leave to the children. And even with current legislation, that's not necessarily the case. If you die after the age of 75, your pension doesn't fall into your estate, but your beneficiaries still pay income tax at their own prevailing rate. So there's a lot of nuances, and I think it is very complex. So I would encourage people to speak to a professional about it when they come to that time.
Great.
Nick, thank you so much for coming in today. I super appreciate it. It's always lovely talking to you. I mean, we've had many discussions over the years, so thank you so much for your time today.
It's been a pleasure, and and it is a subject that's retirement is key to my life because I'm experiencing it. But I think the takeaway is it's not all financial.
No.
It is a mixture of emotional and financial. And the most important thing, and I think you'll probably concur, Oscar, is the ambition of anybody entering into retirement is to enjoy life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'd say even before then.
Indeed.
Thank you for joining us for the Financial Journey Insights, brought to you by Baggette Co Wealth Management. I hope Nick's story has offered some reassurance and shown that feeling uncertain about retirement is completely normal. Whether you're preparing for retirement or already starting to draw on your pension, this phase of your financial journey deserves just as much care and confidence as the years of building wealth. If you'd like to explore your own retirement planning, understand your retirement income options, or get advice on how to manage that shift from saving to spending, we're here to help. You can find more financial planning insights on our website or speak to one of our independent financial advisors. At Baggette Co, we believe retirement isn't the end of your journey, it's the beginning of a new one. Take care, and we'll see you soon.